forum was hosted by Bergen Grassroots, a nonpartisan, nonprofit corporation focused on keeping county residents informed about the activities of Bergen's governmental entities. Its website and this forum series are at www.bergengrassroots.org. Thank you.
President of Bergen Grassroots, a nonpartisan, nonprofit institution that works primarily to make sure that those people who live in Bergen County are aware of what their governmental entities are doing. And we have, for several years, been conducting candidate forums for county candidates, and we've been quite lucky in getting all the candidates, with the exception of one libertarian this year, among the 14 candidates for the 6 jobs that are being filled by election this year, to participate with us. In this session tonight, we're going to begin with a process that has already occurred at 7:20, which is what the deal was, to find out which of the 3 constitutional officers whose offices are up for election this year would go first. And the surrogate drew number 1, the clerk drew number 2, and the sheriff drew number 3. For the incumbent, long-term incumbent, Michael Dressler, who's our surrogate, and his Republican challenger is Robert Avery. And as you know from looking at the questions, we're looking at the first issue to be addressed in the 30-minute segment where we'll be working with the surrogate on what obligation or duty of the surrogate or surrogate's office do you believe will be the most difficult for whoever is the office holder to achieve in the next 3 years. What would need to change or resources needed. Legislative change would be most important to improve the likelihood of success on that problem, and do you believe you'll be able to implement that change. And I'm going to suggest that we start with the incumbent and then go to the challenger. Mr. Dressler?
Thank you, Mr. Powers. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. My name is Mike Dressler. It all starts with the budget. The budget for the surrogate and for the other constitutional officers is going to be very important over the next several years. There's legislation passed within 2 years of where we sit right now. And that legislation indicates that the constitutional officers, in addition to the municipal governments, the county government, must come in with a 2% budget themselves, where this was not the case in the past. It's going to be very, very challenging. We've gone through our first budgetary process. We just finished that within the last few weeks. And it's going to be challenging this year and from here on in. It all starts with the budget and the programs we want to develop as a part of that budgetary process. Everything that's involved, salaries, your programs that you decide to do in the office, promotions, new hires, it's going to become very challenging. And we've tried to do as much as we could with the budget over the past 20 years. My operating budget is actually 8% less than it was when I took office in January '97. So I think that we've done a pretty good job with regard to that. Our cases have increased by over 180% over that time. And my budget is $1.7 million. Most of that money is with regard to salaries. So we have a very small operating budget. We do what we can. Mine is an office that's people-driven. It's the people in the office that make or break my office. And they've done an amazing job over the past 20 years by implementing the programs that we've needed and doing the type of services that we do in the office. We've taken the amount of time that it takes to probate a will down to 15 minutes. We don't want people sitting there for hours at a time wondering what the process is to probate a will, having the stomachs churn. We've all been there because we see people in the worst possible times after someone has died in their family. And it's a terrible process. We try and make it as friendly as possible, as easy as possible, and the people, I think, respect that. So the budgetary process is going to be the most important thing. Anything we do is driven off the budget. If we have the money, we can spend it. If we don't have the money, we can't spend it. But we've started amazing programs. We've started outreach programs. We've started educational processes, a process by which we visit guardians to make sure that they're doing well. I think we've done an awful lot over the last 20 years, and I want to be able to continue that.
Thank you. One of our steering committee experts on time is Ed Lippener, and he's going to be sitting here letting you know when your 2 minutes are up. Mr. Avery, same question.
Good evening. I'm Bob Avery. I'm the Republican challenger for the office of surrogate. I'm going to be talking about the issue of the budget a little later on one of the other questions. But the most important issue that I see coming up is security. In every department in the courthouse, the issue has got to be security. Every single day, I pick up the newspaper, or I get on the internet, or I open up my computer. For example, just this afternoon, and I have an article that pops up on my computer that says the feds charged 56 in a $300 million fraud scheme from 15,000 victims. Fraud is everywhere. It can happen in the clerk's office, it can happen in the surrogate's office, it can happen everywhere. The surrogate's office is particularly vulnerable because that's a place where people go to probate wills and to affect the entire estate of an individual. For example, if we have someone walking to the surrogate's office claiming to be someone who they are not, and obtaining letters testamentary for an estate, they can have power to clean out bank accounts, to sell stocks and bonds, to sell houses, cars, boats, airplanes, everything that is contained in an individual's estate. And there are very few controls, very little security in the surrogate's office when it comes to the issue of security. I have acted as executor on many estates, and I walk into the surrogate's office and they'll ask for a driver's license, but that's about it. We could take some very simple measures in order to protect the security of that office. For example, if we took a fingerprint of an individual who wanted to be an executor, that would at least have a record of who the individual is, even if the fingerprint is just left with the file. If we took a simple photograph of every person that walked into that office, if someone turned out to be someone who they were not, at least the new sheriff, or the then sheriff, would have an opportunity to make a poster to help find that person and run him down. Security is something that everyone has to take enormously seriously, especially the surrogate's office. Thank you.
I'm going to let you go ahead and take the next question. Mr. Avery, I'm going to pick up and sort of take that forward into the next question, which is what function, aspect, or responsibility, including budget development, for the surrogate, do you believe your opponent in this election would be least able to implement during the next 3 years if he were elected? Why do you believe your skills, experience, or other qualification would enable you to implement that function or aspect more effectively than your opponent?
I will answer that question. Now, this is not an issue of character. It's an issue of political differences and differences in the approach. I have a lot of respect for our current surrogate, and I've known him for years. However, we do have differences in the way that we would operate the office. When the surrogate talks about his having developed a budget over the years and being able to comply with that budget, what he has done is something altogether different on many occasions. We may have forgotten that just in 2012, Michael Dressler, as the surrogate, brought a lawsuit against Kathy Donovan, who was the then county executive, when he tried to increase the salary of some of his employees by 14%, and it would have put the entire budget of his department over budget. What happened is it went to lawsuit, it went in front of Judge Peter Doyne, and Judge Doyne threw the lawsuit out, ruling that the surrogate could not increase the budget beyond what it was supposed to have been. He did not have that power. So in terms of pure philosophy, my philosophy is to stay within budgets, to practice reasonable business practices, and not to try to grab for more than a department deserves. Our current surrogate did this just a few years ago, and it is something that no other surrogate in the history of the state of New Jersey has ever done, and that's try to grab for more money beyond his budget and then sue the county to get it. It was a disgrace.
Mr. Dressler, I rather suspect you have a response to that question. And again, the issue is what function, aspect, of responsibility you believe your opponent would be least able to implement, and I take it you may want to incorporate in your discussion of that perhaps a response to Mr. Avery.
Well, first of all, we never had a county executive in the history of Bergen County like Kathy Donovan. The sheriff sued Kathy Donovan. The clerk sued Kathy Donovan. The surrogate sued Kathy Donovan. The freeholder sued Kathy Donovan. You know, there's an old saying, 20 million infringement can't be wrong. And this was the case. When everybody in county government is suing Kathy Donovan, there's got to be a problem. And you know, the voters of Bergen County decided that Kathy Donovan was wrong and that we were right. We instituted that lawsuit. First of all, 14% increase isn't quite right. It's a 7% increase that is mandated by the contract, the county contract. If you give an employee a promotion, there's a mandatory 7% increase that that person has to get. What Kathy Donovan did in that lawsuit, she timed that by 2 for 2 years, so it's 14%. No, it's not 14%, it's mandated by the county. Okay, number one. Number two, we got exactly what we wanted in that lawsuit. Okay, we wanted to go in there and say that we could do whatever we wanted to do within our budget. That was what we proposed. That was what we went in with. That's what we tried to win. That's what we did win. We were given the imprimatur by Judge Doyne that we could do whatever we wanted with inside our budget. So when Mr. Avery talks about the lawsuit, you know, you've got to be a little more astute, Bob, to understand the ingoings and outgoings of what the suit was. Second of all, what will there be that I can do that Bob can't do? I'm able to run things. I didn't show it in biography. I've been a mayor, I've been a councilman, I've been county council, which is the attorney for the county of Bergen. I've been on the board of trustees at Rutgers University. I'm on the board of trustees at Holy Name Hospital. People pick me to run things, and there's a reason for that, because we're able to do that. We know the legislators, we know the other surrogates, we know the other constitutional officers. I was selected as the president of the Constitutional Officers Association of New Jersey, a very well-respected institution that combines the sheriffs, the clerks, and the surrogates. There was a reason for that, because they thought that I could do the job. Everywhere we've gone over the last 20 years, people believe that I can do the job, and I have given all and done that job for Bergen County.
Those of you who picked up something to ask in the course of this, and you don't have either a pencil or a card, be sure to grab one, and Cliff Lewis, another member of our steering committee, can get that to you. And you're on a roll, Mr. Dressler, and I think it's quite appropriate for your opponent to actually be able to give the last response to our 3 questions. So, what issue facing the county poses the most significant challenge to the safety, liberty, and quality of Bergen County residents? It's a general question, including those who are most vulnerable. No. Does the surrogate or surrogate's office you hold seek have anything to do with the effective resolution of that challenge?
Yes. Education is one of the most important facets. What we do is we go about the county and we do an education process to any group that wants us to come. Today we did one in Fairview, we did one in East Rutherford, and we did one in Rochelle Park. And we tell people about the need for wills, powers of attorney, advanced medical directives, living wills. We talk about taxes. We give them an overview as to what they should do to be prepared for the future. That's very important, to let our people, especially our senior citizens, know what they should do to prepare for the future. Second of all, we've instituted programs to provide things for people, especially seniors, who are our most vulnerable citizens. We started a guardianship monitoring program to make sure that the guardians that were in place were doing the job that they were appointed to do. We had 3 sets of people that were done in conjunction with the AARP. We had people that went out to the houses to make sure that the guardians were taken care of. We had auditors that made sure that the records were taken care of. We had one case where we went and a gentleman was lying in a bed with his pajamas on, dark room. My visitors went in, knew something was wrong immediately. They came back and reported to me. We got in touch with Adult Protective Services. We went over there and did a search. This man had skin cancer for over 10 years. The right side of his face was gone. His ear was gone. We had him taken to Bergen Regional Hospital. We got the prosecutor's office involved, and the prosecutor's office pressed charges in this particular case. So we're doing things for senior citizens. When they say security, we've got security in the office. We take driver's license. What are we going to do with the fingerprint? You go nowhere with a fingerprint. If the people aren't known criminals, then you don't have anything to do with the fingerprint. Okay, so we've provided that. We've done programs for senior citizens. we do an educational process. I think that what we've done in the past 20 years has been a pretty good job, and I hope that you continue to have your faith in me and give me the opportunity to continue some of the work that we've done over the past 20 years. Thank you.
Bob, do you have a response about what the Surrogate's office does that's a part of whatever's most at risk in the county? And you may also want to respond to the response that he gave to your budget questions.
You're going to give me a half hour to do this, I assume?
Exactly 2 minutes.
That's fine. One of the responses I have is that the news reports at the time in 2012 did confirm the following. I'm reading from one of the news reports right now. Dressler argued he went just $6,000 over budget. So even though Mr. Dressler's arguing right now that he was not trying to put his department over budget, the news reports at the time said that he was. I have it here on the desk if anyone would like to see it later. But we do not disagree on everything. I hear some concession to the argument of security, but we both do agree that we do have to talk about educating the people. We do have to talk about educating seniors against those who would prey on them. Right now, I'm involved in a lawsuit where an individual preyed on an old woman and convinced the lady to give him most of her estate, which she had done. She later changed her mind and tried to get out of it, but because of what he did in his fraudulent practices, she lost a considerable amount of money. We have to educate people to avoid these practices and to avoid con men. And we have to make sure that they stay away from them. I don't think that Mr. Dressler or I disagree on that in the least. It's very important to do. We have to educate them as to the necessity of making a proper power of attorney, a proper living will. I do have experience in this area. I've been a practicing attorney for 40 years now. Actually, this is my 40th year. And I've tried cases all over the state. As a matter of fact, I get recorded decisions throughout the state and reported decisions in the federal district court, including cases that have gone to the United States Supreme Court. I've been doing this a long time. I know a lot about wills, a lot about trusts, and I make a very effective surrogate in Bergen County. Thank you for listening. No.
I'm going to let each of you make a 1-minute final statement, and then we'll move on to the next, the clerk. Mr. Avery, why don't you start, and then we'll have Mr. Dressler spotlight.
Well, it's been very pleasant being here with you tonight. Delighted to come out in the rain. Whoever wins this election, I think with either one of us, you'll be getting a good county surrogate. Despite the fact that we have arguments, and we do have some disagreements, I have a lot of respect for Michael's integrity, as I'm sure he's got no argument with mine either. We do have some differences in approaches, but life goes on. Michael has been the surrogate for the last 20 years, and I think if there's one thing that we learn, one person should not hold office forever. What happens is that someone can get stale in the office, that new ideas fail to materialize, and eventually there comes a need for new eyes. I think I can be those new eyes. I think I can bring new thoughts and new approaches to the surrogate's office, particularly when it comes to the issue of security of the documents and the records of the surrogate's office. And I think I do a good job doing that. I thank you for listening.
Let me tell you a story. I'll tell you a story about a young kid, 17 years old. Went down the shore the day after his senior prom and was hurt in a catastrophic way. People in his town rallied around him. They raised money, they built ramps, they gave physical therapy, they widened doorways. When the young man had the ability, he decided he wanted to try and give something back to his town. So he ran for council as a way of trying to help the town. He thought he might have a talent at that. He was elected councilman. Several years later, he was elected mayor. Decided that he was going to devote his life to public service to try and do everything he could for other people. He had been told at a very early age that the true measure of success wasn't the money you had or the property you had. It was your ability to impact somebody's life every day. And he took that to heart. And he kept that as his mantra throughout his life. Decided to stay involved in public service and has had a pretty good run. That young man was me. It's something that I've kept very close to my heart, public service. I think it's the highest calling we have. If it's done right, it's the greatest calling of all, to help one's fellow man and help them in a positive way. And that's what I've tried to do over the last 20 years as Surrogate. I see people in the worst time possible. I had 147 families that lost people in the World Trade Center come from my office. And it was an honor to deal with them. And it was the best work my office ever did. You know, there's the first lines from the book, A Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Well, we reversed that. This period was the worst of times, and it was the best of times. It's my office, this country came together and did what they had to do for the people that were involved. I'm proud of that. We've got work to do. We're not finished by any stretch of the imagination. You go to our website, it's a state-of-the-art website. We've got new programs that are going on. We've got cooperations with the county that's allowing us to update all our files so that they're not archaic anymore. When I came into office in '97, we didn't have computers in the office. We've completely changed that. We had 4 people in the office who were college graduates. We have 22 right now, including 5 who have degrees of master's or higher. We've got a better educated, better type of individual working in the office now, but they also have compassion. That's an absolute must. They have to have compassion. They have to deal with these people every day, and I hope that they feel that they've been treated justly and with compassion. I'd like to try and seek another 5 years. I think we've done a good job, and I'd like to continue that. Thank you very much.
We finished with a